Hi everyone, this is Julia. This is the first of a sequence of videos in which I'm going to be going over some of the foundational concepts related to educational equity for bilingual special education students. In this short video, I'm going to give a brief overview of the legislation that supports the rights of English learners. First, I'm going to give you a little bit of a terminology alert. I am going to be using the term ELs, or English learners. Those are students, as I've talked about before, who have been identified using a language proficiency assessment as not yet proficient in English. They make up almost 10% of the student population, and that is close to 5 million students. Some of the previous terms that have been used to talk about these students are English language learners, ELLs, non-English proficient students, or limited English proficient students. Those last two are terminology that we just don't use much at all anymore. The right to EL services has been well established, and it is based upon students' right to educational programs that will help them overcome any barriers due to their lack of English language proficiency. Based upon this strong and well-established right, all states have procedures to identify English learners and to provide some form of English language instruction to these students. What those programs look like may vary from state to state or from district to district in some states. One thing that's important to note is that the form that these programs can take or should take has been debated for many years, even prior to the civil rights legislation that has grounded our current work. So this is not an issue that research on best practices alone can resolve, because this to some extent is a philosophical issue where people have very strong feelings about whether there should be a national language, only one language should be used, and so on and so forth. And we have to recognize that this, to a great extent, is a political issue, not just a research issue. There are three primary legislative foundations for English learner programs, and I'm going to talk about each of these in following videos. One is the Civil Rights Act of 1964. One was the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965. And then I have a little footnote. Things were happening in the mid-60s, some very special things. Life was quite active then. In addition, 1965 had the Immigration and Nationality Act was passed. So some very cool things happened in the early and mid-60s. And then in 1975, along came the Equal Educational Opportunities Act, and I'll explain all of those later. In addition, there are federal laws that govern the education for English learners and students with disabilities. So in terms of process, in identifying English learners, the federal laws that really take a place there are the Equal Educational Opportunities Act, EEOA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is the current reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act in terms of diagnosis of disabilities. We look to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, and in terms of determination of appropriate services, we are going to look at all three. So I will be discussing those in further videos. See you on the backside.